It took over 20 years to identify him, but at least he also got his justice. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Fred Laster. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, of course, hello, my name is Mike. If you are new to the channel, I tell many true crime stories every single week here on YouTube, pretty much every day at this point. So please feel free to subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok for who knows how much longer, because both of my pages there are on very thin ice, but we'll see. Okay. But feel free to follow me over there if you want to. The link to that is in the link tree of the description of this video below. The links to my TikTok will also pop up here at some point in the beginning and also towards the end of the video. Check it out if you want to. Also in the link tree below is my merch store. We do have like t-shirts and hoodies and stuff like that. We ship all over the entire world. So feel free to explore that if you want to as well. And then lastly, if there's a case you want me to cover, just send me an email. My email is listed below. Just email me the name of the individual, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to the list. There are over 5,800 names on that list. I pick my cases at random, so it may be a while before I get to that one, but I will get to it eventually. So yeah. Okay, let's get into today's case. There is a fly fluttering around in this room, and it's very bothersome. It was June 5th, 1994, and it was a muggy afternoon. There was a BP gas station in Lake City, Florida, where there was a dumpster behind that gas station. And on that June 5th day, a passerby just so happened to notice something very unusual. Someone who was walking in the area noticed that there was like blood trails on the side of this dumpster. And when they got closer to the dumpster, they noticed just something absolutely horrific behind it. It was a torso. A human torso. It wasn't a bloody torso. It looked like it had been washed or bathed before it was dumped there. So the Columbia County Sheriff's Department there in Lake City, Florida are contacted, and when they are inspecting the dumpster, they notice that there is this big black trash bag, and it appears that the torso was at one point in this bag, and based on the blood kind of trails behind the back end of the dumpster, it looked as if someone had probably tried to throw the bag with the torso in it in the dumpster, but it was too heavy and the torso probably fell out and slid across the back of the dumpster. And so the person was not strong enough, I guess, to pick it back up and dump it in the dumpster, so they just dragged it to the back of the dumpster and left it there. Also in that dumpster, they found other items like a blood-soaked mattress, and there were like these bathtub decal type things found with the mattress. So what they surmise is that this mattress must have been in like maybe a bathtub at one point, and perhaps the body was placed on top of the mattress in the bathtub because this person needed to dismember the body. This body had no head, it had no hands, it had no legs, no feet, and no buttocks. And it was clear that someone had bathed this torso. The rest of the remains, like the head and hands and stuff, were not found in the dumpster, and they were not found anywhere near the dumpster or in the area at all. There was also bloody knives and blood-stained latex gloves, and there was also a red flannel shirt. This is 1994. They did not have extensive DNA technology yet, and so they could not determine who this body belonged to. They did think that it belonged to likely a young male, but that's all they could really do with it. They had checked missing persons reports in the area, but it didn't match anyone that was reported missing recently. But what they would learn essentially decades later is that a family did try to report someone missing, a young man missing, but that report was never officially filed, apparently, allegedly, with the police department. Like, the police department wouldn't accept the missing persons reports. In 1994, a 16-year-old from Nassau County named Fred Laster would go missing. And his family tried to report him missing, like I said, to not just one, but two different law enforcement agencies. But for whatever reason, the family was unable to successfully report him missing. The family back in 1994 tried to say that Fred Laster, this 16-year-old kid, was last seen in the company with a youth pastor named Ronnie Hyde. But nobody seemed to be listening or reporting or taking it seriously. And so it kind of just went away in 1994. It wouldn't be until about 2014, maybe 2015, when Fred Laster's family noticed a flyer from the NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, about this torso that was found behind a dumpster in Lake City, Florida. Now, back in 1994, they did not know about, the family of Fred Laster did not know about this torso being found. But in 2014, 2015, they see this unsolved John Doe situation. And at that point, the family's like, hey, that may be our missing loved one, Fred Laster. So they get in contact with police once again, file a missing persons report in 2015 again. And this time the family provides DNA so that they can kind of take the family's DNA and match it with the torso found. Lo and behold, it's a match. The torso they found in 1994, in fact, was 16-year-old Fred Laster. Fred Laster was born on February 26, 1978. As a matter of fact, he was a twin. He had a twin sister. And they were born in Jacksonville, Florida. Growing up, Fred would do everything with his sister. They got along really well. Obviously, they were twins, so, it's one of those things. They weren't the only kids in the family. They actually had several siblings as well. Fred Laster, growing up, was someone who always, even at a very young age, had a very charismatic and upbeat attitude. He seemed to interject or inject energy into any situation. Like he just made it fun, I guess. He was an incredibly ambitious young man into his teen years. He loved music. He actually played in a band. In particular, he was really good at playing the guitar. So Fred and his family were members of the Strength for Living Church in Jacksonville, Florida. And there was a youth pastor there named Ronnie Hyde, and he was the children's youth pastor. He directly dealt with the kids of the Laster family. This is when the family once again tells them, now in 2016, about Ronnie Hyde. Ronnie Hyde was the last known person to see Fred Laster. They tried telling police this back in 1994, but nobody seemed to listen or pay attention. With this information, police take a look at the evidence they found with the body. So especially the red flannel shirt. On that red flannel shirt, they found DNA that was not Fred Laster's. So what they do is they do this covert operation. We've seen it before many times where police will go to a suspect's trash can, dig things out of it, and see what they could do. And they find some, disposed or used nasal swabs found in Ronnie Hyde's trash can. They test those swabs for DNA. Lo and behold, there is DNA on them. They then take that DNA, try to match it to the DNA found on the red flannel shirt. It is a match. It was Ronnie Hyde's DNA on that shirt found with the body of Fred Laster. According to Fred Laster's sister and siblings, apparently Fred and the other kids would actually go to Ronnie Hyde's Jacksonville, Florida home and stay there, hang out there, and sleep there sometimes. Fred Laster was in the same church band as Ronnie Hyde. Ronnie Hyde, was one of the adult members of this band. And Fred Laster was with Ronnie Hyde literally the day of or days before the family tried to report Fred missing originally. But because nobody really looked into him and nobody really did anything about it, he just sort of kept on going with his life. His neighbors over the years would say that Ronnie Hyde was someone who kept pretty quiet. He didn't really leave his house that often. He actually owned 2 properties in Florida, and eventually police would end up searching both properties for any evidence they could muster up. But Ronnie Hyde was someone who was basically only ever seen when he went outside to walk his dogs, and he would wave to a neighbor, but that was about it. They considered his neighbors, to be a mystery man. He was just this aloof kind of recluse. aloof recluse. Ronnie Hyde, over the years, would still continue to be a member of whatever church he was, involved in at each time, and he just sort of went about his life. A profiler and psychologist who got involved in this case, and based off of Ronnie Hyde's Facebook posts and other things they've looked into with him, they believe that he would try to counsel people, especially younger people, that are considered vulnerable. He would seem to prey on young people who seemed to need help, and he would pounce on it. He would manipulate these people. But at any rate, the DNA evidence was pretty much enough to arrest Ronnie Hyde for the murder of Fred Laster. He denied it at the arrest. He's saying, I did not have anything to do with this. You got the wrong guy. And he has continued to deny it over the years. Police discovered in their investigation that Ronnie Hyde, back in 1994, was actually taking nursing classes or medical classes, and they discovered that he did have a working knowledge of extensive human anatomy knowledge, meaning he was familiar with where he would need to cut to dismember a body. Obviously, a person will dismember a body like that to prevent it from being identified, which was successful for him for several decades. And through their investigation, they also discovered that in more recent years, Ronnie Hyde had significant amounts of pornography on his computer, specifically of the child variety. In interrogation footage, he remained very calm, cool, collected, very stoic, but almost at the same time didn't really respond much. He seemed to be kind of unemotional when they were interviewing him. They flat out asked him, would you ever hurt Fred Laster? Would you ever consider hurting him? And he just said, quote, I would never hurt him. He said the last time he saw Fred was actually in his car, in Ronnie's car, and they were driving on US Highway 17 at that point, and he said Fred was upset because of an argument he got into with his twin sister, and for whatever reason, Freddy just jumped out of Ronnie's car, and that was the last time he saw him. Okay. So Ronnie Hyde goes on trial for the murder of Fred Laster. The trial happened, I believe, in 2022, and it lasted a week or two. And in the end, the jury were convinced by the evidence. The prosecution laid out, especially the red flannel shirt. They also laid out the blood-soaked mattress, the bath decals they found with the mattress. All of this evidence they would be able to link forensically to Ronnie Hyde, but most importantly was the DNA found on the shirt that was in the dumpster with the body. And this would have likely been the shirt that Fred Laster was wearing. And so that's pretty damning evidence. The motive for this likely was probably sexual. It sounded like this particular youth pastor had an affinity for young boys, and perhaps he tried to sexually assault him, but somehow maybe Fred fought back. Fred didn't want to take that kind of shit from him, and then maybe he killed him out of that. Or maybe he did successfully sexually assault him, but then had to kill him because he was a witness to this. And so he had to silence Fred. It's not really exactly known what for sure happened to Fred Laster. And they have searched both of Ronnie Hyde's properties. I know at one point they took some pretty heavy equipment. They were digging in backyards, and they were digging up whatever property they could dig up to see if maybe Ronnie Hyde had taken the rest of his body, Fred's body, and maybe buried it in his yard and kept it as a trophy. But they did not find anything at either of his properties to indicate that he buried the rest of Fred there. His houses, by the way, were disgusting. It was a nightmare for CSI to even try to find evidence, because he was absolutely a hoarder. He had just shit everywhere. There was just, his closets were stuffed full. There was, I don't even know how, you couldn't even see the floor of most of his properties. And so trying to find evidence in that is good luck. And they didn't really seem to find much evidence pertaining to Fred Laster's murder in any of his homes. But they did find the pornography in his home at least. So they can kind of confirm and match that up with the fact that he had this thing for, you know, young boys, and so they could connect that to Fred Laster. So the jury would come back and find Ronnie Hyde guilty of the murder of 16-year-old Fred Laster. And good old Ronnie Hyde was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was about 65 years old when he was convicted, and he is a predator and a murderer of children. So have fun in prison. Good luck with that. It may have taken some time. It may have taken a couple of decades to even identify him, and it took a few more years after that to catch his killer. But eventually, Fred Laster, this seemingly happy-go-lucky 16-year-old kid with a bright future ahead of him, well, his life was just taken abruptly by a predator. But thankfully, even though it took some time, Fred Laster got the justice he rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case. True crime, or Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe, give this video a like, and follow me over on TikTok if you want to. Check out my merch, and that's linked below in the link tree, and recommend a case to my email. All of that information you can find below in the description. This fly won't stop flying. Piece of shit. Will slit your throat. Get over here, fly. Sorry. What was I saying? I'm gonna true crime the living shit out of this fly. Arrest me for it if you want to, but I'm going to destroy this fly. I'm going to end it. Lock me up for the rest of my life if you have to, but this fly is dying. You little you just flew right in front of me, you taunting little I'm sorry, what? I've lost. I'm killing this fly. Bye!